Bran had seen it all. The fire, the screams, the people turning to ash in seconds. His eyes turned pale white as he came back from the vision. He sat still under the weirwood tree in Winterfell, cold wind brushing against his face, but inside his chest burned with urgency. This wasn't just another glimpse into the past or a whisper of the future. This was real. This was near King's Landing. Would burn. He had seen Daenerys standing alone on the walls of the Red Keep, her eyes empty, her heart broken, her dragon screaming above as fire rained down. Children running, mothers crying. Jon Snow standing in the middle of it all, helpless, stunned, betrayed by love and blinded by honor. Thousands would die unless someone stopped it. But who would listen? Bran sent a raven, not just any raven, but a message marked with his personal seal. It went straight to Jon, who was camped outside King's Landing with Daenerys, Grey Worm, and the Unsullied, planning their final attack. The raven reached Jon late at night. He opened the letter by firelight, his hands rough and shaking from days of war. "Jon, you must speak to her before the bells ring. Do not let her walk into the city with only fire in her heart. I have seen what comes if she is not stopped." Bran Jon read the message twice. He didn't fully understand Bran's visions. The whole three-eyed raven thing still felt like a strange dream to him. But he had learned one thing: Bran never lied. And if Bran said something bad was coming, it meant something terrible truly was. He went to Daenerys' tent before sunrise. She stood by herself, dressed in black, staring at a map of the city. Her hair was tied tightly, her eyes darker than he remembered. "I need to talk to you," Jon said softly. She looked at him. Her voice was tired, nearly cold. "If this is about mercy again, I can't afford to show it. They killed Missandei. They chose Cersei." Jon stepped closer. "Bran sent me a warning. He saw what happens if we go in like this. He saw the city burning, everyone, innocent people, you, me." She looked away for a moment, then laughed bitterly. "Bran sees everything, doesn't he? Did he see how they cheered for Cersei while I bled for them across the narrow sea?" Jon didn't argue. He just placed his hand over hers. "I love you, but I won't stand and watch you become what you swore to fight." There was silence between them. A silence full of everything: grief, love, anger, and fear. For the first time in days, Daenerys' eyes softened. "Just a little. I don't want to be a tyrant," she whispered. "But what if fear is the only language they understand?" Jon looked at her, voice steady. "Then speak to them as their queen, not their conqueror." Later that day, Tyrion noticed something different. Daenerys ordered the Unsullied not to enter the city unless Cersei's army struck first. She gave the Dothraki command to stay back, and when the bells rang loud and clear, she didn't move. Drogon hovered above, but did not release fire. From the streets below, people looked up, waiting for death. But none came. The city surrendered. No fire, no screams. Just a strange, heavy silence. And high above the Red Keep, Daenerys sat on Drogon's back, her eyes wet with tears she didn't understand. That night, Jon stood with her again. They had done it. The war was won, but something in her still felt lost. "You saved them," Jon whispered. "No," she replied quietly, staring at the stars. "You saved me." But deep inside, the fire still lived in her. Quiet now, but not gone. The morning after King's Landing surrendered, the air was thick with smoke. Not from fire, but from the ashes of a war that almost consumed everything. People whispered Daenerys' name in the streets. Some bowed, others stared with fear, unsure of what kind of queen she truly was. Word spread quickly that she had shown mercy, but not everyone believed it was her choice. In the Red Keep, Tyrion paced the war room. He hadn't slept. His face was pale, lips pressed tight. When Jon entered, Tyrion barely looked up. "You stopped her," Tyrion said, voice low. "Bran warned me. I only passed the message." "No," Tyrion said sharply. "She listened to you. And that scares me more than anything." Jon frowned. "Why?" Tyrion walked slowly to the table. He poured himself wine with a trembling hand. "Because," he said, "if your love is the only leash on that dragon, what happens the day she doesn't care what you think anymore?" Jon didn't reply. He didn't have an answer, and that silence said more than words ever could. Meanwhile, Daenerys sat alone in the Queen's chamber. The throne room had been cleaned, though parts of it were still broken, a reminder of what once was. She wore her crown for the first time, but it felt heavier than she imagined. Not because of the gold, but because of the choices she didn't make. And the ones she still might. Missandei should have been there. Ser Jorah too. All those who believed in her, all gone. And the people of this city, they didn't look at her with love. They looked at her the way villagers once looked at dragons in the sky, with silent dread, waiting for fire. She hated it. Grey Worm entered, his face unreadable. My queen, the prisoner, Lannister, Daenerys stood. Take me to him. In the dungeons beneath the Red Keep, Jaime Lannister sat with blood-stained hands and hollow eyes. Cersei had died in his arms, buried beneath rubble. Love or madness, he didn't know what had brought him back to her. Maybe both. Daenerys entered the cell and stood before him without speaking. Jaime looked up, smirked bitterly. Come to execute me? She stared at him. You followed your sister to the end, even knowing she would burn this world down to save herself. And you didn't. He asked calmly. Her jaw tightened. I stopped. For now, she didn't reply. Jaime leaned forward. I saw the look in your eyes when Missandei died. You were ready to turn this city into dust. You would have made your father proud. That cut deeper than he intended. Daenerys turned to leave, her voice cold. You'll stay here until I decide what to do with you. That night, Jon found her again. She stood at the edge of the ruined throne room, looking at the Iron Throne, cracked, dented, but still standing. You've won, Jon said softly. Daenerys didn't turn. Have I? Or did I lose the moment I spared them? Jon stepped closer. You saved thousands. She turned to him then. Her eyes were tired, not weak, just worn. Like someone who had climbed too many mountains only to find more. I keep thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't listened to you, she said. Would they fear me more? Would they respect me more? Jon took her hand. They saw your mercy. That matters. But deep down, even he wasn't sure if mercy would be remembered or mistaken for weakness. Outside the city, Arya Stark watched from a distance. She had arrived just before the surrender, blade ready, eyes hard. But the bells had rung, and there had been no fire, no screams. Still, she didn't trust it. She met Bran outside the city gates the next morning. He sat in a simple wooden cart, his eyes distant, as if always looking at something no one else could see. You were right, Arya said. She didn't burn the city. Bran nodded slowly. She didn't this time. Arya's fingers twitched near her blade. So what now? We just hope she stays merciful? Bran looked at her with calm eyes. No, we watch, we wait. And if fire ever rises again, you'll be ready. Back in the Red Keep, Daenerys stood alone before the Iron Throne. Her hand hovered over it, not touching, just close enough to feel its coldness. She had won the Game of Thrones, but somewhere in her heart, a voice whispered, They'll never love you. They only fear you, and fear was a dangerous seed. 2 days had passed since the bells rang, and the war had ended, yet the city didn't feel victorious. The people of King's Landing moved like ghosts, afraid to speak too loudly, afraid to be noticed. The Queen had spared them, but no one knew why. Tyrion stood atop the battlements, watching Daenerys walk through the streets with Grey Worm beside her. Soldiers marched behind, quiet and cold. Not a single cheer followed her path, only bowed heads and sealed lips. She expected love, Tyrion murmured to Davos, who stood beside him. But all she's earned is silence. She expected justice, Davos replied, but she's still deciding what justice means. Inside the Red Keep, Varys' old chambers had been cleared, but not forgotten. Tyrion returned there alone. That night, pouring himself another drink, the heavy kind that burned his throat and numbed his guilt. Jon entered a few minutes later, looking like a man who hadn't slept since the war ended. We need to talk, Jon said quietly. Tyrion didn't look at him. Let me guess. You want me to keep believing in her? I don't know what to believe anymore. Tyrion finally turned. That makes two of us. There was a long pause between them. Neither spoke of the city. They didn't mention Bran's vision. Not yet. But they both felt it. Something had shifted. Daenerys had shown mercy once, but only because she had chosen to. Nothing stopped her but her own will, and that will was fragile, wounded, constantly torn between love and vengeance. "She's still grieving," Jon said, as if trying to convince himself. "And grieving queens often become dangerous ones," Tyrion replied. Meanwhile, Arya moved through the city in shadows. She watched the unsullied patrol. She listened to whispers in the taverns. She followed Grey Worm when he left Daenerys' side to enter the dungeons, and what she saw made her blood run cold. Jaime Lannister was dead. His body was left in the cell, throat cut, blood soaked into the stone floor. Grey Worm had ordered it. For crimes against the Queen. No trial, no judgment, no warning. Arya found Jon that same night. "He's gone," she said bluntly. Jon narrowed his eyes. "Jaime?" She nodded. "Murdered, quietly. No one told you because they didn't want you to know." Jon felt something twist in his chest. "She didn't order that, didn't she?" Arya asked. "Or did she just look the other way?" He stared at her, not answering. "Don't be stupid, Jon. You think love is enough to keep her soft. People like her. When they break, they burn everything." Back in her chambers, Daenerys stood by the fire, alone. Drogon was resting outside the walls, wings curled around his body like a sleeping god. Grey Worm entered. "It's done," he said. She didn't flinch. "You did it quietly?" He nodded. "No one will question it." But she was already questioning herself. "I wanted to show them mercy," she whispered. "But they only see weakness. They hide behind their walls, behind their words." Grey Worm didn't answer. He had killed for her. He would kill again, and yet Daenerys felt more alone than ever. The next morning, Tyrion stood before her throne, holding Jaime's golden hand. "You told me there would be justice," he said, "but this was vengeance." Daenerys rose slowly. "He betrayed the realm." "He surrendered," Tyrion said. "He accepted punishment, and now he's rotting in silence, like your father once left his enemies." Her expression shifted. "Careful, Tyrion." He stared at her for a long moment. "Your father burned people alive because he thought they were traitors. Is that the throne you want to build?" She didn't respond. The room grew colder, even as sunlight poured in through the broken roof. Later, Jon approached Bran outside the city. The young Stark sat silently as he always did. "I'm losing her," Jon admitted. "You were never meant to keep her," Bran replied calmly. Jon's face darkened. "She can still change." Bran turned his pale eyes toward him. "Can she? Or are you just hoping the fire doesn't reach you?" Jon didn't know how to answer that. He didn't want to. Back in the city, word of Jaime's death had begun to leak. The people grew restless again. Whispers traveled faster than truth, and in the quiet corners of taverns, brothels, and noble houses, the people began asking questions no one dared speak aloud. Is the Dragon Queen really our savior? Or is she just another monster in a prettier dress? And in the shadows, plans began to form. Tyrion knew he was being watched. Every step he took through the Red Keep echoed with suspicion. The Unsullied guarded every hallway. Spies whispered in every corner. Daenerys' inner circle had tightened, and Tyrion, once her most trusted advisor, now felt like a man walking on broken glass. He visited Jon again, this time in secret, under the cover of moonlight. The chamber was quiet, lit only by a single candle. "She's not the woman you followed across the sea," Tyrion said, voice low. "That woman fought for freedom. This one wants obedience." Jon sat in silence, hand resting on Longclaw, eyes cast toward the floor. He looked like a soldier, waiting for orders he didn't want to follow. "I know what you're thinking," Tyrion continued. "You still love her, and that's why you can't see it." "She showed mercy," Jon said flatly. "She showed restraint," Tyrion corrected. "Not the same thing. Mercy is a promise. Restraint is just a delay." Jon clenched his jaw. "What are you asking me to do?" Tyrion didn't answer. He didn't have to. The unspoken words hung heavy between them. She must be stopped before it's too late. Meanwhile, Daenerys walked through the ruins of the dragon pit with Missandei's old scarf wrapped around her wrist. Ghosts of her fallen friends followed her in silence. Jorah, Missandei, even Khal Drogo. Everyone she loved, gone. Everyone she trusted, dead or doubting her. She no longer cared for titles. Queen of the Seven Kingdoms meant nothing if the people she ruled looked at her with fear instead of loyalty. She paused near the edge of the crumbled arena. Drogon landed behind her, wings folding, eyes watching. "They hate me," she whispered, touching the ash-covered stone. Grey Worm stood behind her. "They fear you." "Fear is fragile," she said. "It turns to betrayal." She turned to Grey Worm, eyes sharp. "Bring me Tyrion." That evening Tyrion was dragged before her throne. Her face was calm, but her voice was colder than any winter storm. "You speak in shadows, drink in corners, whisper to my enemies. Tell me why I shouldn't burn you where you stand." Tyrion didn't beg. He stood tall, voice trembling but defiant. "Because I'm the only one still telling you the truth." She rose slowly, stepping down from her throne. Her eyes pierced his. "And the truth is, you're becoming the very thing you crossed the world to destroy." A long silence followed. "I spared the city," she said. "I gave them peace." "No," Tyrion replied. "You gave them silence. There's a difference." Her face twitched. Not anger, pain, deep, festering pain she could no longer hide. She turned her back to him. "Take him to the cells," she said softly. Grey Worm grabbed Tyrion's arm. "No trial, no defense, just like Jaime." That night, Arya visited Jon in his tent. She didn't knock, she didn't ask permission. "You're running out of time," she said. Jon looked up at her, exhaustion dragging his voice. "You want me to kill her." "I want you to protect the realm," Arya said coldly. "She's not going to stop. She'll burn every city that questions her, just like she almost burned this one." "She's not the Mad Queen," Jon argued. "Not yet," Arya replied. "But she's looking more like her father every day." Jon stood, fists clenched. "What do you expect me to do? Murder her in her sleep?" Arya didn't blink. "If that's what it takes." Outside, the city was quiet, but not at peace. Former soldiers of Cersei's army were being executed in alleys. Loyalists to the Queen disappeared overnight. Refugees fled by the hundreds. The Dragon Queen's justice came with no trial, no mercy, and no appeal. Varys had warned them. Bran had seen it. Now Jon stood in the middle of it all, torn between the woman he loved and the realm he swore to protect. He visited Tyrion in the cells that night. Tyrion sat in the dark, lit only by torchlight. His eyes were sunken, his voice weak. "She's not your queen anymore, Jon," he said. "Not if you still care about what's right." Jon said nothing. "She'll destroy everything," Tyrion continued. "It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but she will. And when she does, no one will stop her." Jon's hand hovered over the cell bars. "She trusts me," he said, almost as a whisper. Tyrion's eyes met his. "Then use that trust, before it kills us all." Jon left the cell, heart heavy, footsteps slow. He walked through the halls like a man walking to his own execution. The weight of the realm now rested on his shoulders, not in war, not in battle, but in love. And that was the most dangerous war of all. Jon hadn't eaten in a day. He sat at the edge of his tent, staring at the dark clouds rolling over King's Landing. Rain threatened to fall, but it held just like him. Caught between silence and storm, he kept replaying Tyrion's words in his mind. "Use that trust, before it kills us all." But how could he raise a blade to the woman who had saved him, who had stood by his side in every war since the North? The woman he loved? He closed his eyes and saw her not as a queen, not as the dragon's rider, but as the girl he first kissed beyond the walls, surrounded by snow and firelight. And yet, that girl was gone. In the Red Keep, Daenerys sat at the high table of the War Council. The throne room had been cleared. A new banner with the Targaryen sigil now hung over the Iron Throne, black and red, fierce and bold, no longer shared with the Stark wolf or Baratheon stag. She looked around the room. Grey Worm stood to her right, stoic as ever. A few advisors remained, ones who obeyed without question. No Tyrion, no Varys, no Council of Rivals, only followers. "This peace is fragile," she said. "There are still those who dream of putting Sansa on the throne, or Gendry, or any name that isn't mine. No one will challenge you openly." "Your Grace," said one of the lords. "They won't need to," she replied. "They'll whisper. Spread doubt. Plant seeds of rebellion." Her eyes turned to Grey Worm. "We strike before they grow roots. Sansa Stark has refused to bend the knee. Her silence is defiance." Grey Worm bowed slightly. "Then we march north?" "No," she said. "We fly." Jon entered as those words left her mouth. The room fell silent. Her eyes lit up for a moment, not in joy, but something deeper. Desperation, perhaps? She walked down from the throne and reached for his hand. "You haven't come to see me," she said, searching his eyes. "I needed time." "You're afraid," she whispered. "I'm worried." "About what?" she asked. "About what I might do, or what you might have to?" He pulled away from her hand gently. "Sansa isn't a threat. Neither is Arya. They just want peace. They want a Stark on the throne," Daenerys replied sharply. "They want me gone." Jon's voice dropped. "They want to live." She turned from him. "And what about me? Am I not allowed to rule without being challenged at every turn?" Jon stepped forward, voice tighter now. "Not with fire. Not with blood." She looked back, and in her eyes was something wounded, something dangerous. "Would you rather they kill me first?" she asked. "Is that what it'll take?" He didn't answer. That night, Bran summoned Arya. He didn't speak often, but when he did, it was never wasted. "She'll march north," he said. Arya narrowed her eyes. "To do what?" Bran blinked slowly. "Burn Winterfell." Arya stood, every inch of her body tensed. "Then we strike first." "No," Bran said. "We give Jon one more chance." But Arya's patience was cracking. She had seen the Red Wedding. She had seen the Night King. She had seen what happened when you waited too long. Back in the city, Jon stood on the broken balcony where once Ned Stark had walked. Tyrion joined him, his wrists still red from the cell chains. "She wants Winterfell," Jon said quietly. Tyrion's heart dropped. "Then she's gone." Jon looked up at the sky. Dragons circled above, a shadow of death gliding through the clouds. "She trusts me," Jon said again, softer this time. Tyrion turned to him. "Then save her soul, or save the realm." Jon found Daenerys at sunrise, alone near the Iron Throne. The throne looked almost too small now, almost childish, compared to the cost of reaching it. She smiled when she saw him. "We can build a new world," she whispered. "You and me." He nodded, stepped closer, his heart breaking with every breath. She stepped forward, wrapped her arms around him, her voice trembling with hope. "No more secrets," she said. "No more betrayals." Jon held her tighter. "No more." And then steel slid through her. Her eyes widened, not in anger, in disbelief. She looked up at him, breath caught in her throat, her hand shaking as it touched the blade. "Why?" she gasped. Tears streamed down Jon's face. "Because I loved you." Her knees buckled. He lowered her slowly to the ground. "And I had no choice." The bells of the Red Keep tolled once more. This time not for war, but for death. The Dragon Queen had fallen, and the world would never be the same again. Drogon felt it before he saw it. The moment Daenerys' heart stopped, the bond between them cracked, like a thread pulled too tight, snapping in the wind. He let out a deafening roar that shook the foundations of the Red Keep. Birds scattered from the sky. Soldiers froze in place. The city fell silent in terror. Jon stood there, kneeling beside her body, covered in her blood. He didn't move. He couldn't. His sword lay beside him, forgotten. His soul felt like it had been torn from him. The weight of what he had done pressed down heavier than any crown. Drogon descended from the sky, crashing into the ruins of the throne room with a fury that cracked stone and flame. His wings spread wide, blocking out the dawnlight. His eyes, full of fire, pain, and rage, found her body. And then him. Jon didn't move. He looked up at Drogon with empty eyes. "Do it," he whispered. "I won't run." But Drogon didn't burn him. Instead, he let out a howl that sounded like heartbreak. He nudged Daenerys' lifeless body with his snout again and again, as if willing her to wake. Then he turned to the Iron Throne, the twisted symbol of every war, every betrayal, every drop of blood that brought them here, and with a roar that echoed for miles. Drogon melted it. Flames hotter than dragonfire had ever been poured from his throat. The throne turned to liquid, dripping into the stone floor like a crown of tears. He didn't kill Jon, he didn't burn the castle. He burned the dream. Then he took her. Drogon wrapped Daenerys' body in one giant claw and launched into the sky, roaring across the heavens as he disappeared into the clouds beyond the east. And just like that, she was gone, but silence didn't last. By midday, the Unsullied stormed the throne room. Grey Worm's scream of rage echoed through the halls when he found it empty. No queen, no throne, and Jon Snow sitting on the cold ground, wrists open, sword gone, waiting. "I killed her," Jon whispered. She was becoming what she feared most. Grey Worm struck him across the face, once hard, drawing blood, but didn't kill him. Not yet. He wanted him to suffer. Jon was dragged through the streets in chains as people watched with wide eyes. Some looked away. Others nodded grimly. Whispers followed. "The queen is dead." "The dragon took her." "Snow did it." Arya saw him from the shadows. Her hands went to her blade, but she didn't draw. Not yet. Not until she knew if this was justice or a setup. Back in the camp outside the city, the great houses had begun to gather. Sansa arrived from the north, fury in her eyes. Brienne came from the Stormlands. Samwell Tarly from Old Town. Gendry, bruised but alive, from the Riverlands. And Bran, quiet as ever, already knowing what was to come. A council was formed. They met in the Dragon Pit, the same place where peace had once been attempted. Now they gathered to decide what happened next. Tyrion, still a prisoner, was brought forward. "You killed your queen," Sansa said. He shook his head. "No, Jon did." All eyes turned. Jon, in chains, stood before them. He looked smaller than he had ever looked, not just tired, but haunted. "She was going to burn Winterfell," he said. She had already begun to talk of conquest. She believed the only way to rule was through fear. "I believed in her, until I couldn't anymore." Arya nodded once, barely visible. "But you killed the queen," Yara Greyjoy snapped. "You murdered her." "She freed us." "She was becoming her father," Jon replied. "You didn't see what I saw." Grey Worm stepped forward. "He deserves death. And yet, if we kill him," Sam said, "we plunge the realm into another war. The North won't accept it. The Unsullied will fight. We'll tear each other apart again." The council argued for hours. Voices were raised. Threats were made. Jon stood quietly through it all, a man willing to die but not to run. Finally Bran spoke. "No ruler will save us. No throne can fix this. But balance can. What are you suggesting?" Sansa asked. Bran looked at Jon. "Exile. He takes no crown, no wife, no children. He returns to the Night's Watch. The last of them." Sansa stood. "You want to send my brother to a frozen grave for saving the realm?" Bran nodded once. Yes, and in that silence, they agreed. The Dragon Queen was gone. The throne was no more, and Jon Snow, the man who gave up everything, was headed back to the Wall. But this time, there was no war to fight, only ghosts. The gates of Castle Black creaked open as Jon Snow rode through them once more, dressed in black, face hardened by guilt, sorrow, and silence. Ghost padded beside his horse, the only soul that had remained loyal without condition. The Night's Watch was no longer what it once was. Only a few dozen brothers remained, and most of them were boys who barely knew how to hold a sword. The wall stood tall, but cracks had begun to show. The long night had passed, but winter, true winter, never left these lands for long. Tormund Giantsbane stood waiting near the gates, arms crossed, beard thick with snow. "They really sent you back," he said, spitting into the frost. "Thought maybe you'd talk your way out of it." Jon dismounted, his voice hoarse. "Didn't try?" Tormund studied him. "You look worse than the last time we froze our balls off together." "I've earned it." They shared a long look, not quite brotherly, not quite friendly, but something stronger than both. Tormund clapped him on the shoulder. "Come on then. Plenty of snow, fewer kings." Jon walked through the keep, remembering every stone. He had died here once, bled on this very ground, betrayed by his own men. And yet here he was, still breathing, though barely. Later that night he stood at the top of the wall alone, looking out into the endless white. Beyond the tree line the wind howled like old ghosts. He didn't flinch. This cold was honest. Unlike politics, thrones and dragons, Sam had written him a letter before he left King's Landing. "You did the right thing, Jon, but sometimes the right thing still feels like death. Stay strong, brother. The realm owes you more than it knows." Jon tucked the letter into his cloak, where he kept Daenerys' old silver ring. He couldn't forget her. Not when he slept, not when he closed his eyes. She haunted him, not as the queen, not as the conqueror, but as the woman who once believed the world could be better. The one he failed to save from herself. That same week, strange things began to happen in the forest beyond the wall. Wildlings spoke of whispers in the trees. Campfires that went cold too fast. Animals fleeing south in packs, eyes wide with unseen fear. One boy, no older than 12, returned to Castle Black trembling. "There were eyes," he said, in the snow, glowing. Blue. Tormund didn't believe it at first. "The dead don't rise twice," he muttered. That war is over, but Jon didn't dismiss it so easily. That night he rode with a small group of wildlings to the far north, beyond the ruins of Craster's keep. The ground felt strange, the air too still. He remembered this kind of cold, the kind that seeps into bone and whispers you don't belong here. They found a tree burned black, surrounded by animal carcasses, untouched, frozen, eyes wide open. "Not a single drop of blood. It's just wolves," one man whispered. Jon dismounted, touched the bark of the tree, and felt something wrong. A hum, like distant music or voices calling from under the snow. He turned back. "We're not alone." Suddenly a shriek tore through the night. Not human, not beast. One of the men behind him dropped to the ground. Eyes wide, chest torn open, no blade, no arrow. Jon drew his sword, Ghost snarling at his side. Then came the wind, fiercer now, full of movement. Figures moved between the trees, tall, silent, shadows in white. Not white walkers. Not exactly. Something older. Tormund stepped beside Jon, axe ready. "What in seven hells is that?" Jon didn't speak. He couldn't. His eyes locked on one of the shapes. It looked like a man, but wrong. Skin like cracked ice, eyes not blue but silver. Its face twisted in pain or rage, and it didn't walk. It glided. One of the wildlings tried to run. He didn't make it 3 steps before he was yanked into the darkness. No scream, just silence. Jon raised Longclaw. "Form a circle. No one runs." The things in the forest didn't charge. They watched, studied, waiting for something, a message, a warning, or maybe a memory of something long forgotten. Jon stood firm. He had left the war behind, but maybe the war wasn't finished with him. The forest didn't breathe. The snow had stopped falling. The wind died, and in the dead stillness, Jon Snow stood with Longclaw in hand, surrounded by a half-circle of wildlings and 2 dead men already behind them. Ghost crouched low, teeth bared, eyes fixed on the figures slipping through the trees like shadows. 1, 2, 5 of them now, silent, inhuman, not exactly white walkers and not the whites either. These were different, smarter, older. Their bodies shimmered with thin veins of silver that pulsed under their skin, as if ice itself was alive inside them. Their faces, almost human but twisted, as though once men long ago, long forgotten. "Hold," Jon whispered, raising his sword. "Don't break the line. Tormund stood to his left, breathing heavy, eyes locked forward. "Tell me you've seen these things before." "I haven't," Jon said. "But Bran told me something once. Not everything the children of the forest made was lost." The closest creature stepped forward, slow, deliberate. And then it stopped. Its silver eyes stared straight at Jon, not with hate, not with hunger, but recognition. Jon stared back, and suddenly something passed between them. A vision, a flash of ancient memory, a circle of stones. Blood in the snow. A man tied to an ice altar, and the faces of the first men, screaming as something was done to them. Changed. Jon staggered back a step, clutching his head. "What was that?" The creature tilted its head slightly. Then for the first time it spoke, not in words, but a cold whisper inside Jon's mind. "The world forgets. But we remember," Jon's heart pounded. "What are you?" "Oh, what you left buried. And then they vanished. No sound, no wind. Just gone." The wildlings looked around in horror, weapons still drawn, unsure if it had even happened. But Jon knew it had, and it wasn't over. He returned to Castle Black that same night, frostbitten and shaken. He went straight to the Raven Tower and wrote one letter, addressed to Bran the Broken. "They're not gone. They are older than the White Walkers. Not the dead. Something worse. Said no armies, no banners. I will find where they came from, alone. I don't think this is a war that can be won by sword." He gave the letter to a raven and watched it vanish into the night sky. The next morning he packed a small bag. No ceremony. No farewell. Tormund watched him saddle the horse in silence. "You're not coming back, are you?" he asked. Jon looked at him. "I don't think I belong here anymore." "You never did," Tormund grinned sadly. "But that's what made you better than the rest of us." Jon smiled faintly. "Take care of them," Tormund nodded. "And you take care of you, Snow. Don't let the ice swallow your soul." Jon rode out alone north of the wall, past Craster's Keep, past the haunted forest. Days turned to weeks. The cold grew harsher, unnatural. He passed dead animals, untouched by predators, preserved in ice as if frozen in time. And then he found it a valley hidden by mist and snow. Deep within it stood massive black stone monoliths arranged in ancient spirals. Symbols carved into them pulsed faintly with a light like moonlit steel. In the center, a pit, wide dark, humming with the sound of something alive far below. Jon dismounted. Ghost growled low, tail stiff, ears back. He walked forward, and then a voice echoed in his mind again. Not words this time, but a feeling. Regret, anger, purpose. He looked into the pit. Something down there moved, and suddenly he understood. These were not creatures of death. They were balance. The White Walkers had been the weapon. But these, they were the ones who chose when the weapon must rise. The children had not made just monsters. They made guardians, watchers, judges, and now they were waking again. Because Daenerys died, because Jon broke the cycle, because history changed, and that change had a price. Jon dropped to his knees, not in fear, in acceptance. He wasn't the king in the north. He wasn't the bastard of Winterfell. He was the last blood of ice and fire, the bridge between the old world and the new. And as the wind howled through the valley, the whisper returned one last time. "You took the fire. Now you must hold the frost." Jon stood, looked down into the pit, and stepped forward. The mist swallowed him whole. Above the valley, the snow began to fall again, heavier this time, like a warning. And Ghost sat at the edge of the world, staring into the white, waiting for a master who may never return.